I've been monitoring the state of affairs in Yemen with growing anxiety, particularly in recent weeks as reports of the increased threat of famine have circulated. I'm deeply concerned by the level of violence in Yemen and by reports of violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. 3 years of war had devastating consequences for civilians. Yemen is now the world's largest humanitarian crisis, with over 22 million people, 3/4 of the population requiring some form of humanitarian assistance, and some 2 million people internally displaced. The latest report from the UN Humanitarian Coordinator for Yemen, Lise Grande, sounds an alarm that between 12 and 13 million Yemeni citizens are at acute risk of famine in the coming months if conflict continues. Ireland has provided almost €16.5 million in bilateral humanitarian assistance to Yemen since the conflict began in 2015. Of this, €4 million was contributed in March this year to the UN Yemen Humanitarian Fund. Ireland also pledges global funding to a number of organisations which are particularly active in Yemen, including the World Food Programme, UNICEF and the International Committee of the Red Cross. Ireland also contributes to EU support for Yemen. So since the beginning of the conflict in 2015, the EU has allocated over €438 million to the crisis. It supports therapeutic feeding centres for treatment of malnourished children, healthcare, food aid programmes and emergency assistance to displaced populations. Humanitarian access is also a critical issue so that aid can reach those who need it, and there is a pattern of difficulties with this in Yemen. Commercial access is equally important, since a population of over 20 million people can't survive without aid indefinitely, or on aid alone indefinitely. This has been one of my consistent messages to all parties to the conflict. Officers from my department consistently convey the government's strong concerns to the Saudi, UAE and Iranian embassies in Dublin. And I myself met with the Saudi ambassador this afternoon and stressed the emphasis that Ireland puts on this issue, as well as the other issue that was raised by the previous deputy. Both at UN level and in EU discussions on the issue, Ireland has sought at all times to stress that military action will not be sufficient to bring a lasting solution to the conflicts between communities in Yemen. Military victory, even if it is achievable, will not address the root causes of the conflict. The pursuit of military victory also brings an unacceptable cost for Yemeni people on a humanitarian level. We've seen time and time again the tragic results of errors and recklessness which are endemic to conflict situations. Negotiations must be reinvigorated, and Ireland and the EU fully support the work of Martin Griffiths, the UN Special Envoy for Yemen, and his team. The Government is also vigilant for opportunities to make any progress we can in international fora, including on ensuring accountability for crimes committed during this conflict. At the Human Rights Council in September 2017, Ireland was part of a small core group of countries that drove forward the adoption by consensus of a resolution establishing a group of eminent experts on Yemen. I personally worked closely with the Dutch Foreign Minister at the time, Bert Jonkers, on this resolution. The group established is carrying out investigations into all alleged violations of human rights and international humanitarian law by all warring parties in Yemen. Last month, Ireland worked to ensure the mandate of this group was extended for a year to allow more time to complete its vital work. I'd like to assure the Deputy that Ireland will continue to take every opportunity to urge stronger international action and will press for a negotiated settlement to the conflict in Yemen.